Scorpio moon energy is it's really, really unique in its ability to need to self-protect. Scorpio is a very deep sign. It's a water sign. It's like still deep water. It's not that there's nothing in there, but you really can't see it because the surface is quite murky. But you get this kind of sense when you're around it that there could be something in there, that there's the unknown, and it's captivating as well because it's kind of it's still, but it's an active stillness. That's what Scorpio moon feels like. It's kind of like that stage within our psyche when not within our psyche, that stage within our stress response just before we act. It's like a kind of waiting, pausing, observing. Scorpio moon really takes in from the environment so much that it doesn't even understand, and it can't really interpret at great speed. So unless there's other things in the birth chart which speed up the thinking process, the talking, the analysing, the putting across of ideas, Scorpio can be a little bit slower to understand things. They might react quite quickly, but it will be a body-led reaction. It might take a little bit longer for the conscious mind to go, what is that about? Because there's so much depth, there's so much richness in the emotional content that it can be difficult to go, okay, it was that. That's what I'm picking up here. Those are the undertones that I'm resonating with. That's why it's so important for Scorpio moon or any Scorpio placement really to do, wherever possible, go and find a therapist, go and find body work, do daily movement practice so that you're consistently really getting to know yourself and your emotions and how you react, so that when you're in an environment where there's multiple energies and responses and people and things, you can kind of recognize what you're connecting with, being either you or someone else. So it helps you to understand your boundaries. Not that Scorpio has porous boundaries, like, say, for example, Pisces might, where they just merge. Scorpio does merge, but it merges in a different way. There's much more of a kind of meeting and contract before they merge. That's another thing with Scorpio moon, because they are incredibly self-protective. When they build up into a relationship, it can really be quite life or death for them, because they have gone through this process of say, for example, the bottom at the murky pool, that they're slowly coming up to meet you, resonating, moving up. And if you start to come down and meet them, that you'll rise with them and they'll work with you. But you have to really put the effort in to meet a Scorpio moon, because they're down here, and they want to pull you down. So you have to help them. You have to help them up to equalize from this deeper emotional state. It takes a strong person to be able to do that. Scorpio moons make fantastic partners when they really can open and trust in another. But they really have to work on their own stuff first. If you look in any astrological textbook, they'll talk about the difficulties of the relationship with the mother with Scorpio moon, or a challenging childhood, and largely I think there is some truth in that, but I think it's more to do with the interpretation of the Scorpio moon of their environment. And that's why it really helps to unpick and unravel what in earlier formative years was not them, and really ascertaining what was not their faults. Really looking at that will help in relating with other, so that they can meet other people. They might still want to dwell down here, because Scorpio moon loves depth. It loves really getting to know a subject or a person or a thing inside out. It gives them a sense of power and personal power. Superficial stuff doesn't interest Scorpio moon. Maybe at a transitory, that was nice, but if you can't take it down into the deeper spectrum, they'll get bored pretty easily. So really a Scorpio moon needs to know in this lifetime themselves as intimately as they want to know other people. If you have really gotten to know yourself in all the potential ways that life can meet you, you're going to make great relationship material, because you're not going to put those assumptions and expectations on another person when you've really resolved them in you. In relationship, that's when we really meet the parts of ourselves that we are just projecting onto other, which can be really hard for Scorpio moon, because you pick up so much from your formative years, you pick up so much from your environment, you can just be projecting stuff all over the place that isn't necessary. It's just going to keep you in a place of pain. So, if you know who you are when you're elevated, if you know who you are when life squashes you, if you know who you are if all of a sudden you have, rise to fame or money, or if all of a sudden you have your status taken from you, really exploring the full capacity of who are you in all of these different situations. And then you'll stop meeting these unconscious patterns in partners, unconscious patterns such as abuse or manipulation or jealousy or control. And again, these are patterns that you've learned. These are patterns that you've observed in the behaviours of maybe your parents or your guardians when you were growing up, or your siblings or your peers, gravitating towards these situations where there's been this really obvious imbalance between people, whether that's you're a child and an adult, or male and female in this patriarchal model that we're in society still. A Scorpio moon will absorb that and say, well, this isn't fair. This isn't equal. This isn't balanced. This feels like a disparity of power. You really have to look at resolving that within yourself for it to stop being in your relationship, for it to stop being your external world. So really Scorpio moon at its peak, at its benefit, is deeply, deeply emotionally intuitive, very aware of the multi-dimensional weave of what's going on for another person all the time. So it could be someone who in interaction, someone saying, hey, how are you? And they say, yeah, I'm fine. Scorpio moon's like, I'm really picking up on your on your ancestral wound that's carried in your mother line, and I see it represented in your emotions and your relationships. And this is just in like a hello, So Scorpio moon can be insightful. It can be a real healing force for those around whoever's with the Scorpio moon. A rock as well, like a real friend who can manage someone else's emotional stuff. And there's not many people really that can sit with you intently and listen and feel what you are saying, and maybe not sympathize, but empathize and have compassion for what you've been through, because they know. They've been to those emotions. They know how they feel. They don't know your experience, but they intently care about what you're saying. So they've got this amazing capacity to sit with someone else's discomfort in their emotions, as long as they've worked on their own, as long as they've worked through their own. We're talking about an evolved Scorpio moon here, one that's really wanted to put in the work. And to any Scorpio moon out there who's kind of contemplating whether or not they should do that, do it. You will be so grateful for being able to speak to someone at depth, at the level that you really want to be met, who has got no expectations of you. It will change who you are. It will change how you function. If you only know the darker aspects of your moon sign, if you're overwhelmed with jealousy and control and manipulation, go and seek like a depth psychologist or a body psychotherapist, or someone who can really, really talk to you on all of these levels where you're craving that intimacy with self, without fear, without betrayal and without mistrust. And you can really build that in safe relationships first, before it crosses over into your other relationships, and then you will really meet the the amazing quality of Scorpio, this healer, the phoenix, the one who is connected to the deep emotional richness that can be creative and can change lives, really. Very, very healing energy. Once the wound within self is healed. So Scorpio moon, it's a sign of extremes. So at its worst and at its best, it's like two different people, and that can be within hours, within a day, or this can span across a lifetime, from maybe a darker youth to quite an inspired, creative adulthood, or vice versa. It's a sign that you just cannot predict.